So that type of concept. If you take a look at how the Koreans did it, they only copied what the Japanese had already established, and then gave it a Korean identity. And so basically, this is how I structured it, so that everyone had a title. So my title graduated as I got up in rank. As you well know, I preserved both my karate rank and my taekwondo rank. And so Hanshi wanted me to consider 8th Dan Okinawan Shorin-ryu. I told him I don't want to do it until I have gained more knowledge, because rank without knowledge is nothing.
It's useless.
Absolutely. I said, so he accepted. Although he wanted to promote me to 8th, I'm holding off until maybe 2018, God willing. I just got back from Korea back in July, where I tested, and I came back with a 9th Dan in
9th Dan.
Taekwondo.
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy with that. I didn't get what I want in Kukiwan, but that's another subject. But I was happy, like I told one of my colleagues in Dubai, Grandmaster Ziad, I says, I'm happy with the Chundaquan because number one, Chundaquan was the first of the original Kwans. And of course, Wan Q Lee had studied under Jushin Funakoshi Sensei. So he had Shotokan background.
So let's
Number two, the person who had created both the Palgway series of Pumse and the Tegu series of Pumse for Taekwondo was one of the persons was Park Man. Park Man trained me. So that means that the person who promoted me to 9th Dan was my teacher, as opposed to an organization.
Yes.
This is very important. This is very significant. This is where we're losing out. So much of us are losing out. I sent you a picture this morning on Messenger of me and Hanshi.
Yes.
I've been with Frank Hargrove for 44 years. In spite of some of the things that he's done, or let's say he's lost some credibility here and there, undisputably, he has the knowledge of Okinawan karate. What's up? And everyone knows that. And in spite of the fact that some left him because of other reasons, I chose to stay with him because, you know, you can't choose who your teacher is going to be in life, nor can you determine how they're going to live their lives.
Right.
Your job is to extract from them the best of qualities that can help you in your own life. And that was always my position.
So let's get into the weeds, Quantum, about the Taekwondo and the karate heritage and bridge. Let's clear that up just a little bit for some of our listeners that don't understand the difference between where karate is and where Taekwondo bridged into, and the teachers that between even the Funakoshi and the heritage.
Okay, well, of course, I'm going to give you my opinion, and not necessarily my opinion, but what I have been taught.
Yes.
And it may have irregularities, it may have some disputable points, but this is what I was taught, and this is what I teach my students to this day. That many years ago, the Japanese ventured into Okinawa when Okinawa was its own country.
Okay.
And because they had heard about this martial art that the Okinawans had. Now, I was taught that the Okinawans were credited for being the first group to establish an empty-handed system of defense. Now, that being the case, historically, the Okinawans had what we call modern-day wrestling or the grappling stuff.
Now, every person on the planet had empty hand anyway, because they had to learn to defend themselves.
Of course. Now, there had been some Chinese influence in it. The Kung Fu aspect of the Chinese arts was geared back in those days more as a tool for improving one's health.
Right.
We had people that come over to Okinawa via statesmen or whatever, via China, that brought over these tools, brought over these exercises. And the Okinawans cleverly adapted that to their grappling style of fighting. That's why Okinawan karate is not very attractive, because it's purely for defense. So it's the grappling. For example, anytime a hand is in this position here or this position there, you know that the leading hand is the blocking hand and the trailing hand is the grappling.
It's a grab. Yep.
As simple as that. So, I mean, so this kickboxing and all this other stuff, this is just old karate renewed or repackaged. So what happened was they embraced this system, and there was, of course, as you know, there was 3 kingdoms. I basically come under the Naha, the Naha kingdom. And this is where the Okinawan Shorin was birthed. Now, which followed the lineage of Tota, then Mitsumura, Itotsu, Shabana, Nagasato, Harrell, me. That's my lineage. So now, the significant thing about Funakoshi Sensei, his teacher had actually come from that same lineage as well as Shabana had come from. So he actually had that same working knowledge. Now, Funakoshi Sensei was an educator. He was a school teacher. And I learned just recently when I was with Hanshi, because I'm trying to get some of these timelines together, the difference between the pre-World War I and the post-World War II. So this is where it gets lost. So when the Japanese visited and said, "We like this stuff here," he said, "Where are you from?" And the guy says, "I teach Shorin-Juru." "Oh, okay. Where you from here?" "I teach Go-Juru." "Okay, where you from?" "I'm Shorin-Ru." "Oh, where you from?" "I'm Isshun-Ru." Well, no one had uniforms. No, there was no order. No, and of course the Japanese are very orderly people.
Correct.
They viewed this as, they like what they saw, but they viewed it as chaos. He said, you guys need to put this in a package for me, and so that it becomes more palatable for us. Now, what's more honorable, even to this day, in Japanese society than a school teacher? We had this conversation last night with some of my black belts. I said, why should a school teacher be so significant in a society? And they collectively said, because their job is to train and educate the next generation.
Correct.
So we've lost the plot in the West. They'll pay an engineer, which I am academically, more than they pay a school teacher.
Right. It's crazy.
But to make a long story short, so Funakoshi was tasked with representing Okinawan karate.
Okay.
As a retired school teacher, he first visited Japan, Tokyo, in 1917.
Yeah, it was pre-war. I knew it was before 1920.
Yeah, it was 1917. In 1922, he moved over there permanently.
Okay. Yeah.
And he befriended Kono. Kono, who was the founder of Judo. Kono and Funakoshi Sensei had the same common occupation. They were both educators.
Yes.
They were both school teachers. So, as you well know, Kono is credited for how we do things structurally in the martial art classes today. The belt system, all this other stuff, all that was a result of this orderly Japanese procedure. So now I also learned just recently that Funakoshi Sensei never had a dojo like you or I. He moved right into the academic arena. He was at the university level. This now explains when the Koreans came over, and I point out of the 5 original Kwans, all of them except for Mudokwan Tang Sudo, which was headed and founded by Wan Ki, had studied in Japan as university students.
So they developed the Kwans for the Punsa.
They developed their Kwans as schools of thought based on who they had trained under when they were in Japan as university students.
Okay.
So you can see that karate in Japan as well as in Korea were fostered from an academic setting.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll get to that later because that's one of the downfalls that I think we have right now in karate. Because that was one of the things I wanted to ask my teacher about. How can we now improve the image of karate do?
Yeah.
But to get back to the point, so Funakoshi Sensei is now in this university setting, and he's surrounded by these scientists. Even though he was an academic himself, a retired one, he was around all these guys that were interested in the dynamic movement and all this other stuff, which gave birth to what we now know as Shotokan Karate. That's why the long, deep stances and the wide stances for stability and all this other stuff, the dynamic in movement. They basically have about 4 footwork movements, and that's about it. When Taekwondo may have about a half dozen, even more. But basic footwork for movement and everything, more linear movement as opposed to lateral movement.
Mm-hmm.
So this was all under the watchful eyes of these academic scientists. So basically, this is how karate, as we see it now, Shotokan Karate is presented right now as a stage. Now, again, we're going to remember, Kono also was given credit for being able to get Japan on the Olympic stage. Judo was an Olympic sport as a result of Kino's efforts. So it goes without saying that at some point, someone was saying, we got to make karate also somehow on the Olympic stage, but they weren't able for some reason to do it. And the reason why they weren't able to do it because of these different clashes of rules, schools of thoughts. And as you can see right now, in 2020, I think primarily the principal representative is going to be Shotokan Karate.
Which I think is good. Which I think is.
I'm happy that there is a presence there. Yeah. Irrespective of whose rule is there, I need it there because the world needs to realize that karate is a legitimate tool for self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it has attributes that go beyond the realms of conflict. And this is the marketing package that we must put together. But to get back to the historical connections, so all these Koreans like Won Kyu Lee and others left their native Korea because at this time, Korea was under occupation by the Japanese.
Okay.
In fact, the Japanese went to Korea in 1903 as diplomats, but by 1909, they controlled it. So from 1909 until after World War II, the Japanese fully controlled and dominated the Korean peninsula. Full stop. So the lie of someone peddling that Korean karate or Korean martial art is 3,000 centuries old is a lie. Because I could show you, and if you open up a book, you'll discover that the Koreans, unfortunately, had been under the control of somebody almost his whole history. If it wasn't the Mongols or the Chinese, it wasn't the Chinese or the Japanese. Full stop. And in my youth, I bought into the whole package because I was actually a practicing Buddhist. a Nichiren Shoshin Buddhist. And in my latter days, I became, as you all know,
As a Muslim.
I've been a Muslim for the past 18 years. And so, but I bought into the whole package. So I understood the philosophical connections with martial training.
Which is what we've missed today. I think so many of us have, I think the West has done that, an injustice. And I think that's where I love to teach, because I think that's the whole other part of it. Or if you have to split it, I'd actually split it between 80% of the intelligence and 20% on the physical.
Right.
And why?
Have you had a chance to read my book or just skim through it a little bit?
I did.
Now, if you take a look in that book, I speak about that, and I speak about the West maybe having difficulties embracing the whole package. But certainly as instructors, we should have a working concept with the 5 minds.
Mm-hmm.
See, I spoke about the 5 minds. And of course, and when I was telling my students about that Tom Cruise movie, The Last Samurai.
Okay.
That scene where the guy is telling you too many minds.
Oh, yeah.
You can't defeat someone with that many minds. You got, too many minds. And this is and he talks about these 5 minds. And as a martial art instructors, we must know philosophically what they are and how to help our students understand this and learn how to apply this.
So talk about the 5. Mention the 5 minds. Talk about the 5 minds.
Okay, let's speak about the first one first. I just want to speak about the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Shoshin. That's the one. That's the mind that says that you've entered a place for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking, wow. Now imagine having this same mind each and every time you enter a familiar location. That means that you're going to see something new each time.
Each time.
And so you understand this. Now this understanding mind is critical. Let me I have my book here in front of me. Let me see if I can find it right quick for you. What did you think of my book? This is a commercial.
I really think it's a beautiful book. I think it's well written. My books are probably, I don't think it's as well written as yours, but it's a beautiful book. I got it right here too. Here's this beautiful book that most people can get, and you can order it through here or contact us through here, and we'll get you a book sent out to you with Grandmaster David J. Harrell. So, and as you're looking through those pages, you're in Scotland.
That's right. I'm in Scotland. I moved to Scotland 20 years ago. Yeah, I met a Scottish gal, finished college, and decided she wanted to go to the United States to live. As they say over here, America, but I remind her that we're no longer a colony. And she stumbled into my martial arts school about 3 days after arriving. And she wanted to continue her Taekwondo training. Taekwondo over here, the principal Taekwondo program over here in the UK is ITF, not WTF.
Okay.
But that's another subject another time. But to get back to this Shoshin. Shoshin is this mind, this beginner's mind. So you have a refreshed experience each time you walk into a room. It's like watching your favorite movie over and over and over. You say, wow, I don't remember that scene. Oh, I didn't know that color was that. You pick up every little thing. You pick up more things. Well, this is this type of mind that you have. In the Buddhist philosophy, it's called Honyam-myo.
Honyam-myo.
Are you familiar with Honyam-myo?
Yeah, because I'm a practicing Buddhist.
Okay, so the seeking mind. That's your seeking mind. The second mind is the, I'll give you another example. I tell my students, you are a martial artist. With this type of mind, this is Shoshin mind, you should be able to walk in a room. What do you want to know first? You want to know where the fire extinguishers are. What do you want to know first? You want to know where the exits are.
Yeah.
Are there windows there? You want to know how you can get out if you need to get out.
That's right.
You need to know that who's in that room. What type of people are in that room? Are there more males than females? Are there more females than males? These are the things that you want to collect data in that room. I said, that's the martial way. You want to know the typology. If you're living in a neighborhood, you should sometimes just walk.
Just in
the alleyways, the little shortcuts. That might be your ticket for survival.
That's right.
These things. So this is this mind, this seeking mind. The Zenshin is a lingering mind. This is a mind where you go back and reflect. You know, at the end of a class, I used to understand the significance of Hanshi saying,
Yep.
So this is this time for this Zenshin, this lingering mind to reflect. What have I studied today? Why have I studied it? How can I apply it? Okay? This is very important.
What I do with my students on that, I believe in notebooks. All my students bring a notebook, and at the end of class, write down your notes.
Yes.
And then we'll talk about it a little bit, and then we'll finish class. But notebooks are important so you can do that reflective mind.
Absolutely. I had a student, her name was Joan. Joan was famous for that, and at the offset of a student, when a student first enrolls in my program, ideally as a white belt, because sometimes it's very difficult for students to empty their cups, she would write down notes. And I would tell them, I says, now, I would suggest you write down notes so you can write this information down. I said, but I would tell you right now that as you progress with me, you will discover that there's going to be inconsistencies in what I tell you. What? There are going to be inconsistencies. What's going to work today is not going to work tomorrow. And it's going to change because your learning process is going to be dynamic.
That's right.
As a result of it being dynamic, that means that I've got to put up scaffolding to get you to a point A, then tear that scaffolding down.
That's right.
That scaffolding no longer needed. So you're gonna find inconsistencies in what I say. And of course, she said, "Sir, you said so and so." Now she's a green belt. Sure, but you know, on August the 15th, you said so and so and so. Precisely. You're correct. I said that, but that doesn't apply anymore because this, and this. Oh, yes. Yes, I see. Yeah. Now, I'm actually assisting them in developing this lingering mind.
That's right.
You understand what I'm getting at?
It's what teachers should, it's what teachers are teachers to do.
As opposed to kicking and punching. And this is our problem right now.
Yes.
The third mind that I talk about in my book is Mushin.
Yeah, no mind.
No mind, no mind, no mind. This is the one that was talking about in the Tom Cruise movie, The Last Samurai.
Picture.
You just deal with what is. No mind. No mind. You know? And then Fudoshin. Taekwondo talks about this indomitable spirit. But guess what? That's nothing new. Kono was talking about that same thing back in the early 1900s. It's just a copy job. But of course, unless we open up a book, you never know that. You think this is a new concept. So this indomitable, this indomitable spirit, this unmovable, this unshakable spirit can be transcended into as far as competition or in combat. You can't hurt me. You can't stop me. Or in the same way, you're not going to stop me from being successful. I'm going to do my very best to get an A out of your course, even though you've never given an A.
Right, right.
This is the same spirit. And of course, the last but not least is Sishin, which is enlightenment. which very, very few of us get to.
We're still working on that. I keep falling back down, going back up, fall back down.
So you can see where it was very important with this academic setting that Funakoshi went to, and was fostered to develop this from a higher level downward. And see, and not only that, here's the dilemma that we also face. I know we're bouncing a little bit, but it's all connected. Is that it's people of an academic background or those who have a thirst for knowledge that can appreciate the discipline that's associated with the martial art training and are willing to make those sacrifices for themselves and or their children. When the people of lesser understanding, less education, will have a dilemma. They will have to decide whether they want to buy that pint of whiskey or they're going to pay for their kids' tuition next week. That's the problem they face. Now, who needs the martial art training? We all do.
We all do.
And my brother is a retired educator who lived in Baltimore, Maryland. He says, back in the mid-70s, when he graduated from uni, and he immediately got a job in Baltimore City school system. Baltimore City realized that they had to do something about their educational system. So the first thing they did was they evaluated all of their teachers.
Okay.
He turned out to be one of the top 3 teachers in the whole state. So what they did was they immediately took him out of this ghetto school and put him in this predominantly white area with affluent people.
Okay.
His argument was that the well-to-do do not need the best teachers. It's those who come from socially disadvantaged environments that need the best teachers, because they're the ones that need to be fostered more, because there's a lot of elements that they have to deal with. Wherein those who are influent, they understand the need and necessity for education.
So let me ask you this: between now, when we get into education, when we talk about the industrial period of the Americas, is that where we split between? I think that's where we split between education and productivity. Is that where it got kind of confused between that industrial period of, and then, because we never really focused on
what
it.
we did was the industrial period turned out to be a vehicle to support a bigger picture. The argument took place earlier than that. Now, you understand what I'm saying when I say the bigger picture. The academic of that time, of the people of color, was W.E.B. Du Bois.
Right.
And the person who was a strong advocate for vocational education was Booker T. Washington. So now, what do we do? Well, the first thing we do, we can't have all of these people academics.
Because we need workers.
We need them to be workers. They
Yeah.
were historically workers in the colonial period, in the period of ugliness in the United States. They were workers, and we've got to maintain this philosophy. We can't have that as being an academic.
Right.
So the first thing we have to do is discredit the person who's pushing the academic. And so, as you well know, Du Bois was advocated as a communist.
Yes.
So, boom, that's a great day. X marks on him. Boom, he's a communist. We can't have that. We can't listen to him. Pushing off on the vocational education. There's nothing wrong with vocational education, because right now, this is what's the problem in Europe, where academic has been pushed so hard that now they have a need for vocational trades as well.
Yeah, they don't have tradesmen. Not enough tradesmen.
Precisely. The pendulum has swung too far the other way. So you have to have a balance. You see. So that explains the industrial period. But to be fair, also the industrial period also served as a tool, as a ticket out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good thing as well. It wasn't totally a bad thing. It was a good thing.
So now we have lost track between education, vocational, and academics, and now there's not even a separation between one and the other. There's a lot of, to me, it's like a smash and grab. It's who can do it either cheaper or faster, but not better. So we've lost that part of education. I think the martial scientist and the martial artist teaches in those 5 minds. It's not even in the process.
We've lost that, but we've lost it, and there's a lot of illusions that's been put in place to keep you blindsided, so you can't find out. And I attribute those components to, I was talking to someone just the other day about the martial art. I said, and how we can improve it. I said, imagine living in a neighborhood. You're a teenager, and you're about to open up your house front door and walk out.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time you get at the end of the block, you're going to meet or pass by or see the most successful person that you know in this world. And it happens to be a drug dealer or a pimp.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So your image, your concept, your idea of something successful is not.
It's not.
Or someone, you think about it, Ice-T, some of the other, they are a great success story, but that's just like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
That's another illusion. It's another illusion that keeps people blindsided so we're talking about the hard case of this and that. We can't even get to that point yet. Our children, our youth cannot even see that because they're being blindsided with illusions,
mm-hmm.
with false successes. And of course, we all know about the effects of misuse of drugs and alcohol.
So now, even historically, can you bridge the gap at how the martial artist has always dissolved the illusional aspect of the inner self? It always, even from my young teaching, it was never about illusion. It's about where you are and who you are with when you are. So the
training was always able, if you had enough about you to walk into someone's school of the olden days, by virtue of the training and the personal demands put on you, you were going to grow. Your life was going to change and was going to change for the better. It's full stop. The problem was how to get people to come into that environment. That was the challenge. So when I tell people that, before the oil crunch took place about 3 years ago, I had about almost 500 students. And of course, most of them were from somewhere else.
Okay.
Middle East and other, Northern Africa, whatever, some of these countries that had oil, these expertise. Now, my school was and still is loaded with I would say about 98%
academics
of my students are academics, or their parents are academics.
Mm-hmm.
And they speak more than one language. Even my kids, that was one of the things that I moved over here. I have 3 sons. They are fluent in French. And they speak perfect English. When I say perfect English, it's not, oh, yo, what's going on with that? They speak English like you and I are speaking. So my hope was that they would be educated over here from K through 12, which is a problem if you take credence to that movie, what? Waiting for Superman. That was an excellent documentary.
It was a good. If people don't know what Waiting for, yeah.
I saw 20 years ago. I saw that coming 20 years ago. I said, I can't raise my kids in this environment. That's why I said K through 12. K through 12, then they can go back to they can go to the United States and whatever. I could envision them going to Harvard or whatever else, because they've chosen to stay here to go to school. I got two in college right now, but one is studying marine engineering, the other one's studying hospitality. But it could have been a lawyer. But again, you got to follow your own dreams.
That's right.
What you want to do, you can't. Yes, I would love all of my kids to be an engineer like myself, but they may not want engineering. That's okay. But the bottom line is, I never regret leaving my country for my children.
Right.
And that was the whole reason, because I saw through that. I said, they look at you, their head is not down. Yes, they're biracial. My wife is obviously Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
And so they look at you in the eye, they hold a good conversation with you. They speak the Queen's language.
Mm-hmm. And
this is all I wanted. I didn't want and looking downcast and feeling inferior. And that's the system at work. So this is one of the things that also the martial art is able to deal with.
Right.
Self-esteem.
Pick your head up.
Pick your head up. You are a major contributor to society.
Yeah, you're a beacon.
Absolutely. And this is how the key is, how do we do this? I tell you what, if I had to write my book again, I've hardly sold any of my books. You know why? Because the audience was to martial artists.
Yeah.
And we don't collectively, we don't read. So how in the hell, I walked into the guy's school lessons. I says, he said, yeah, look what my students can do. I said, yeah, all right. I said, do you have a syllabus? What?
What's a syllabus? Right.
Do you have a school handbook? I said, every school that you ever go to has a book.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a book, a guide that tells the students what his or her expectations are going to be. You got to have this. Well, if you don't read, you don't have this. If you don't have a syllabus, how are you going to teach your students? I walked into a guy's school when I was in the United Arab Emirates. I walked into a guy's school, and he had a white belt doing a jump turning back kick. Whoa. And so he said, Grandmaster, will you show me how to do so and so? I said, I don't show white belts that.
No.
I said, so I supposed to push kick, the front kick, the round kick, the side, the front kick, push kick, and the crescent kick. And the crescent kick is nothing just to loosen up your hips so you can be able to do turning back kicks at a later stage. This is what I teach white belts. That's it. And basic keyhole movement, you're blocking, punching. Even if you are a Michael Jordan and walked in the mat, if you were a Lopez, a Stephen Lopez, and walked in my class as a white belt, you would be taught the same thing.
Yeah.
Because we need this developmental process all the way through. And I describe this in my book, and I explain why. Why I have this developmental process. We don't skip any steps. More importantly, who knows? That kid might become an instructor one day.
That's right.
To be ensured that he has all the tools of fine teaching.
I say I teach to teach. I teach to teach. And every time I have a new person that sits with me, I say, I teach to teach. I say, what do you think that means? And they always look up and go, oh, I don't know. I said, well, because when I teach you, you will be able to teach. Because this is a tree. I'm dropping. My mother used to tell me, if you're going to be a tree, drop seed. And if you can't drop seed, then we all die as trees. So I want my seeds to bear fruit.
Absolutely.
I teach to teach. So that's why I want you to bring your notebook. Whether you teach or not, it's a choice that you have. But the ability you will have. You will have the ability to teach.
Right.
So that's what I do. That's how I do it.
Well, you know, I've spent several weeks in the States, well, 2 weeks in the States, just over 2 weeks in the States, just getting back day before yesterday. And of course, immediately, I told my students from the States, I have a distribution list that's labeled black belts, and one is labeled red belt, black belts. So this says, I'm having a red belt, black belt class on Friday night. So every red belt and white belt class, or every red belt and black belt will be to that class on Friday night unless they got a very good excuse. And I will go over some of the things that Hanshi disclosed to me about technique, about movement, about philosophical things, some of the context that I've shared with you in this thing, about historical connections, whatever else. And they will have their books and paper and we were writing it down. Because, hey, Grandmaster Dyer, we are the end of it.
Yeah.
And if we don't do a good job of passing on, it's going to die, because some of our colleagues right now are just teaching people how to kick and punch.
I think that it's still the young crowd. I still think I really feel that everyone that I call friends and brothers and sisters, we are such a large group, but yet small and minute and compared to the population. The younger generation, meaning the younger students of the art, have not been taught historically this way. And they're the ones who open up these bigger schools. They're touching these other kids, and that's getting missed. So I think when I say I love to teach teachers now, because I think I just want to give teachers the other component. They probably have great physical attributes of them. The spinning back kicks of the world, the double 360, whatever, but they're missing the other 80%.
Yes.
They are. And if they're missing the 80%, that means you're teaching your students 20% of what you know, and they're missing probably another, dynamic times 2 of it. And I think that's why we're all grasping at this fear. I think we have a fear issue. I think we have a worker bee mentality, but they're missing the minds. They actually don't even study the 5 minds. Yeah. They don't even know the difference between the 5 minds and the different levels between your physical, mental, spiritual, and the whole holistic of life. They're missing all of that.
Yes.
So here, and then to me, that to me is an attribute of war. That's why we're going to come with blood in the streets and blood in our homes, because we're missing so much of this cog that's been separated from us on purpose.
Yes.
I totally believe it's on purpose. But if we can get to hold of some martial artists who want to be martial artists and who want to teach, not instructors who know how to do karate or any other form teach. I think there's a difference between a martial artist who teaches and a person who's an instructor who can do this and teach. They're not the same.
Yes. Okay. I've had the fortune of being able to work as an accomplished engineer project manager, and at the same time parallel to that, run a martial art business. I don't know how in the hell I did it, but I can tell you right now that what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching full time here and what I was doing back in Seattle, there's no comparison. Because when I told my students, I'll wake up and I think of them.
Mm-hmm.
The day that I wake up and do not think of how I can improve them, is when I retire. When I had a split life, I had to think about what I need to do at the Boeing Company before. And then, oh, I got class starting later on today. What am I going to do? What am I going to teach?
Right.
So my students were only getting a piece of me.
Right. Right.
But more importantly, I was only given a part of myself. You have to be in a situation where you give yourself.
All of yourself. Yeah.
One of my black belts was telling a student last night. He says, to do kata, you have to do kata with feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it with feeling, with not just doing the movement itself. You have to be doing feeling. I told myself, I can remember many years ago, back in the 70s, I started studying Hashi. He had just got back from Okinawa. He had just got back from Okinawa with the 6th Dan, the youngest 6th Dan in the world. And he would say, David-san, let's do kumite. Oh man, I loved kumite. When he said kata, I'll come up there and do the kata. He said, let me tell you something. When you do kata, it's like when I call you up to do kata, it's like you physically come up, but you spiritually are still sitting.
Yes.
Oh, so when I understood what he meant about, like student described it, doing it with emotion, with passion, I discovered a friend, and I have him to this day. His name is Whiskey Man. He is my partner. So when I'm simulating a block or a grab, it is Whiskey Man that I'm doing it to. When I throw a punch, I'm looking at Whiskey Man's eye. Did I hurt you, or do I have to hit you harder?
Do I get you harder?
So this is why I told my students. I says, some of them, Sensei Margaret is correct. What you are saying, what she's telling you is that you must do it with the sense of urgency.
Yes.
You need to do this, otherwise this is for your survival. Now, I sent you a clip earlier today to give you an idea of what my classes are like.
Yeah.
But more importantly, because as you notice, I do exercise in a military cadence.
Yes.
Now, back in the early days in Hanshi's dojo, the majority of those guys in my class, as described in my book, were from the U.S. Marine Corps. Most of those guys had just come from Okinawa. I mean, so the classes, like it was described in the book, they were hard, demanding, and more importantly, they were real.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned an attitude about and the importance of voice control in the teaching. If I want to elevate the emotions of my students, I got to develop my voice control. If I want to lower it, I can use my voice control. I got to create a spirit and a camaraderie amongst them, even though they're different. And I use this with cadence. And so we run an emotionally driven class that you just want to see. But more importantly, you notice I switched from Japanese to Korean.
Yes,
Japanese to Korean. Just to show you how flexible the mind is. There's an old saying in Buddhist folklore. It says that a man's mind is like the root of a tree. It will absorb anything around it, even the poison that will kill it.
Yeah.
So the point being, if you create an environment that cultivates thinking process, then the students will grow mentally. I've got students who have trained with me and are trained with me right now. For example, Ryan. Ryan is working on a mechanical engineering degree. He enrolled in my, chemical engineering degree. Ryan enrolled in my class his freshman year. He's now working on his master's. He's in a master's program now. Hardly ever missed the class. Why? I told him, I said, if you do my martial art and your studies and nothing else, you will not miss my class, because my classes are going to stimulate your mind. So this is why I sent you that footage to show you that these are one of the techniques I use in stimulating my students' mind.
So how can, one of the probably the biggest things, I mean, we're not the only one discussing this, is how do we get this into our educational system, public schools, private schools, where they understand the principle of what, because if we learn three things, the martial science, English, and science, or math, the other stuff you could throw away. Because with the martial arts, depending on the art, and I thought of this as a school, as a charter school, we have your different regions, whether it be Korean, Japanese, Chinese, and anytime you learn the art, you learn the language. So, because a lot of things.
Now, you in. Sorry. Continue, please.
You broke up a bit.
Yeah. Continue, please. Continue.
Oh, so with the charter school, you come in, you learn, say you're learning the Chinese, you learn Chinese language, you learn the Chinese art, you learn the Chinese custom, you learn the Japanese art, you learn the Japanese language, you learn the Japanese custom, and so on and so on. With that, you learn your social studies. With that, you also learn your mathematics, because we teach angles and principles of movement.
Your geography as well.
Right.
Now, to get back to the initial question, you are in a perfect position for being able to at least spearhead this. I'll give you an example. I was invited back in 2013, to do a talk, because I had written, as you all know, several research papers.
Mm-hmm.
One was on the psychological implications of martial art training on children and adults. Well, I happened to be, when I presented that, I happened to be on the same panel with a lady by the name of Dr. Kimberly Lakes. She has a tenure at the University of California at Irvine. She did her research was focused on the cognitive functioning and how martial art training improves cognitive regulation. Now, we're talking heavy stuff now. This is one of the problems that our martial artists have to be able to do. We need to up our game. We need to be more academic. She did a research and then introduced it to the state of California. And the state of California looked at it and it says, okay, we're going to start allowing martial arts, and specifically Taekwondo, in the physical education program, so that the students could, and they started a pilot program. I think the pilot program lasted for 8 weeks. I have to go back and take a look at it. But it's on the website. Just type in Dr. Kimberly Lakes, and you'll see it. She started a pilot program for about, I think it was 8 weeks long. And what it turned out was that, one, the students that participated in the Taekwondo program, as opposed to the classic physical education program, did better academically in school. Their grades improved. They were less likely to be involved in gangs or in groups. But more importantly, they were physically fitter than the persons who were in the classic physical education classes.